Welcome back to the show. Can't wait to get started today with our Total Wellness Tuesday topic on can coffee actually boost fasting and autophagy benefits. So this is one of the most popular topics right now to really dive into, and that is because if you're really interested in looking at the bioindividuality of a person, you can find studies to back up both sides of the argument. So you can actually find studies that indicate caffeine in coffee can cause serious metabolic issues in some people, raising anxiety and blood sugar. We'll get to that in a moment. And in other people, huge benefits in terms of healthy regulation of inflammation, blood sugar, autophagy, etc. So we're going to go through that today, and then a simple solution that should work for 99+% of people. So that's why I love doing these shows, because I can look at both sides of the argument. Some people are in so deep with their dogma, with their online marketing programs, or whatever it might be, that they have to stick to it no matter what. And they're just going to cherry pick the studies that allow them to look right and allow their methodologies to look right, when we know that not everyone reacts the same to every single food. So why can't we actually talk about that? Why does it have to be keto or nothing, carnivore or nothing? Why can't it be, or even, vegan or nothing? Like, that's the thing, is like, I can support all of those for the right person in the right place. There's no doubt about it. And do I believe in a predominantly more plant-based diet? I do, because more of the research proves that out, meaning that if you have to err on one side, you're going to want to go more plant-based. That's just the way that it is. Now, some people want to be 100% plant-based. Some people will want to be more like 80% or 90% plant-based. So I'll leave that up to you, but my job is to really show you both sides of the argument and allow you to decide based on real research. And also, the truth is that you can figure out what works best for you. I mean, that's the honest answer. You can figure that out through at-home lab testing. You can figure it out through trial and error. You can figure it out. We'll put it that way. You don't need to leave your health, which is the most important thing in the world, up to anybody else. You don't. You can get insights from practitioners and IHPs, and you can do your at-home lab testing, and you should, right? But at the end of the day, you want to say, I'm not going to stick to a dogma about an exercise routine or a nutrition plan or whatever it might be, just because that's what's most popular. And today's topic really proves that. Okay, so let's go through this right now. So vitally important, and I just want to make sure, there we go, that we are good to go. So the biggest things for looking at overall benefits or side effects would be to examine the effects of coffee, because we are talking about coffee here today, on people with different types of, let's say, pre-existing health conditions, okay? So let's take a little deep dive on that. Now remember, this is caffeinated coffee, and I'm really calling that out because towards the end of the show, I'm gonna show you that we might be able to mitigate all of this with different forms of coffee. Okay, so let's go over some of the benefits, because again, I am someone that says coffee can be highly beneficial for some people and not so great for others. And I've always maintained that. I really have. And we see that in Ayurvedic medicine going back 6,000 years ago. So we know that it's true. I mean, that stood the test of time. And also anecdotally, we know it's true, even if we're not even looking at the research, which of course we can. So let's get into it. I'm beating around the bush, dive into it. Okay. So who could caffeinated coffee most benefit? Well, if we look at just overall all-cause mortality, there seems to be a reduction in all-cause mortality for people that drink coffee. Great. Okay. So we've got that. Like, that's a nice one. We live longer. Also may protect with cardiovascular-based health. So heart-based issues, looking at liver cirrhosis, right? So if we look at cirrhosis of the liver, well, coffee might help with that. It's power with weight loss. Again, we include, not high dose, but we include specific pharmaceutical grade. And it's not a pharmaceutical, but it means it's clean, right? We include that in our fat velocity product because we know caffeine can boost metabolism and help people lose weight. That's clinically proven. That's an easy one. The next one is cognitive function. So can caffeine help with dementia Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's. It looks like that. It really does. It honestly looks like that. Now, we'll tease out in a moment, is it the caffeine or is it the antioxidant effects, right? Because most people, believe it or not, most people get the majority of their antioxidants for the day from coffee. That's no exaggeration. The average American gets most of their antioxidants from the coffee they drink because they're not eating enough fruits and vegetables, which is where the other antioxidants would come from. Antioxidants come from plants. I'm going to go over the irony of how coffee and coffee beans are a plant-based food in just a moment. Okay. As I know, so many people are against plants at the moment, which is, again, beyond comprehension when you look at the research. Let's go over a couple more. These are important. We talked about Alzheimer's. We talked about dementia. I think I did mention Parkinson's, but for sure, coffee seems to be able to help with Parkinson's as well. And type 2 diabetes, I kind of talked a little bit about this with helping to regulate healthy levels of blood sugar. But again, when you look at type 2 diabetes, I want people to know it's just not about highs and lows in blood sugar. It's about inflammation, and it's about being able to improve cellular osmosis, we'll say, the ability to get sugar out of the bloodstream and into the cells. So insulin sensitivity is what we call it in medicine. So the next one is all about cancer. So when we're looking at specific types of cancer, prostate, breast cancer, liver, colon, endometrial type cancers, we see in the research there seems to be a correlation with coffee consumption and protection against many of these forms of cancer. So again, the coffee is not a cure-all. I'm not providing you medical or treatment-based plans to say, oh, I have X, Y, or Z, or this runs in my family. I should take this and I'll be fine. I'm not saying that. There's a lot more to the equation, but at least we know that coffee may provide benefits for healthy levels of blood sugar, cardiovascular, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia, certain forms of cancer, liver-based disease. So pretty powerful, right? And again, where does it come from? The caffeine or the antioxidants? We'll get to that in just a moment. But let's go over the negatives, right? So the negatives, because there are negatives, right? I've talked about this, and a few years ago, before anybody was really talking about it, I was teaching people how coffee bumped people out of a fasted state if it rose their blood sugar. And people are like, well, that's crazy because I drink my coffee black, or I drink my coffee only with some type of fat in it. And I was showing people with a really simple at-home device called a glucometer that you could test your blood sugar upon waking, which you should. And if you're not below a 90, then we need to work on that, right? Should be really between a 75 and a 90. And then when you go to have your coffee, well, simply take another blood sugar reading after you have your coffee. Like, it's honestly, it's that simple. And if it's now above, let's say 100, well, your body is not tapping into body fat, which is why a lot of people are doing the longer states of fasting besides autophagy to the same degree. And again, it's quite easy to test. And that's because if you drink coffee in some people, it will stimulate, so these are some of the side effects. It will stimulate the adrenals. So we call it hyperadrenalism or hypercortisolism or corticolism. And it increases stress hormones overall, such as adrenaline and norepinephrine. So we know that this does affect certain people to a greater degree. Who does it affect to a greater degree? Well, a lot of times that Vata, also known as the ectomorph, or the Pitta, if they trend more Vata, which is also known as the mesomorph. Endomorphs, not as much. They're typically a little lower on the metabolic rate in the first place, which is why they typically gain weight more easily. But still, it could happen. There's no doubt about it. But I know many of the kaphas, the endomorphs that I work with, they could have coffee, honestly, at dinner, and it wouldn't affect their sleep at night. Their metabolic process is just a little bit different. But in those people where it might stimulate a little bit more anxiety, or it might cause insomnia or some form of sleeplessness, we certainly do not want to do that. Other people can cause arrhythmias, irregular heart rates, and depletion of certain minerals in the body, such as magnesium would be a big one, and sometimes potassium as well, because of one of those stress hormones called aldosterone. That would be sodium sparing and potassium depleting, and that is to get you more revved up, right? Get that blood pressure going, ready for the fight or flight. So that happens in many people, but not everyone, right? So how do we know? Well, honestly, a simple stress hormones, mood, and metabolism test would show you. You can take that right at home. It's so easy to do, honestly. Looks at your stress levels, looks at your estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, DHEA, cortisol throughout the day. It should show a nice little wave, so basically a peak around 6 to 8 in the morning, and then a slow decline for the rest of the day. And then it looks at your thyroid levels, it looks at your hemoglobin A1C, your insulin. It's the best test out there. It's so easy to do. You can do it right at home. That lab you can find at equi.life. It's just equi.life, or you can run it with your local integrative health practitioner or a naturopathic doctor as well. Okay, so we know that we can figure this out. There's no doubt about it. You can even use that simple glucometer. I'll link that up in the show notes today. What is today's show number? It is at stephencabral.com/1761. So head on over to stephencabral.com/1761. I'll link up the at-home test. I'll also link up that, probably $20 for that at-home glucometer that we use. And remember, all my resources are always at stephencabral.com/resources. There's about 100 there to know what I use in my practice, to know what I use in my family, and you can use it right at home yourself as well. Okay, now let's get into something a little bit deeper, because I did say that if coffee works for you, if it doesn't spike your blood sugar, well, and it doesn't cause anxiety, and it doesn't cause sleeplessness at night, then there can be big benefits, and the benefits can actually come with fasting and autophagy. So I want to break that down for you right now. So really, when we get into autophagy, people are like, well, autophagy happens at 12 hours, then it happens at 18 hours, or maybe it's really 24 to 48 hours. So the truth is this, is that autophagy it's really always happened. If you look at the process of autophagocytosis, which is what autophagy is, it's the basically cleaning up and repair process of the body. Okay, that's always happening. But really we're talking about autophagy to a greater degree, where cancer cells can be destroyed, viruses, pathogens in the body, all sorts of things can happen in the body. And we know that that happens somewhere between 12 hours and about 48 hours in the body. Now, that is in a fasted state. So that's why I tell everybody, well, 99.5% of people in my practice, and then eventually 100% of people in my practice, once we've corrected those little issues with the adrenals, if there are any, that we want to fast for a minimum of 12 hours a night. When in doubt, fast from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. Honestly, for most people working a normal 9-to-5 job, have your dinner by 6, fast from 6 to 6, you're good to go. In an ideal world, most people could fast from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m., and that's probably perfect, honestly, for most people. Then when the day gets going and the stress hormones are ramping up, you probably want to put some food in your body. I have many shows on that. I'm not going to break why down today, but we'll link up some additional shows as well on autophagy and why you probably shouldn't skip breakfast for most people, okay? But that's 14 hours. It's super simple. And of course, if you want to go 16, you don't have to wait till lunch. I've talked about that so many times. You could just go till 10 a.m. Okay, so let's get into it now. But why autophagy? Why coffee may help. All right. So essentially what happens is we have an anabolic side of the body and a catabolic side of the body. And the anabolic side of the body is the building up. Well, the problem is the building up can also build up cancer cells, and it can build up a lot of arterial buildup and plaque and all these different things that we don't want. So that's the building up side. Now we want that, because if not, we become too catabolic, like the ectomorph, right? We break down too much and our body's too weak. We're more susceptible to things like pneumonia, right? So we want to make sure that's not the case. But most people are overfed and under-exercised, and they really need more of this autophagy, right? They're exposed to all the different chemicals in the environment, and they eat too much protein, all of these different things. So mTOR is too ramped up, and that's why we see now cancer is like 1 out of 3 people, potentially 1 out of 2 people by the year 2030. So this is very, very important, right? It's important for cardiovascular, for blood pressure, it's important for cancer, and it's important for type 2 diabetes. And as I've said before, if you can get rid of those 4, and many of them, they're really lifestyle-based, except for, again, whether you know it or not, it's not like you're purposely giving yourself cardiovascular disease or high blood pressure. Many people have no idea that a lot of what they're doing are causing those things, and they're actually quite easy. And I don't want to, easy is the wrong word. not difficult, I should say. It's not difficult to reverse engineer the process. But of course, life gets in the way. So I don't want to make it sound simplistic, but there are absolutely things that you can do to bring your body back into balance. Now, cancer, as I've always said, is the wild card. It's always the wild card. I'm reviewing a great book this coming Friday. Hopefully you tune into the podcast on that, on early detection, as well as what you can do to really help keep the body safe from cancer. Okay, so what I want to share with you is this. When we start to dip into autophagy, we actually start to inhibit mTOR. And mTOR is mammalian target of rapamycin. And what that means, again, is that's more of the anabolic pathways. Well, if we can inhibit that for a while, for it to take a break, then our fat metabolism and repair can go up, meaning we can burn more body fat because our blood sugar is normal, right? We've depleted a lot of liver glycogen. And that can happen overnight. I mean, believe it or not, for the ectomorph, that can happen literally within just a couple hours, right? So we want to make sure that we are normal blood sugar, okay, that we're not too high for sure and not too low. And then what we're going to do is we're going to turn on the repair process through something called AMP-activated protein kinase, or the AMPK pathway. And we'll talk more about that in the future. But think of it like this. We've got mTOR on one side, and we've got AMPK on the other. And so we need mTOR to help build up the body, make sure it doesn't become too weak. And then we also, though, need to turn on the AMPK pathway as well. So what caffeine has been shown to do with coffee is to increase AMPK and help with autophagy and repair. So it's pretty remarkable. So that's why I love to be able to look at this is say, if coffee doesn't spike your blood sugar or give you anxiety or insomnia, then this could be a beneficial tool for you in order to increase your fasting benefits and autophagy, which is basically cellular cleanup. All right, it goes around, like I always think of autophagy as the Pac-Man or Pac-Woman inside your body, going around inside the Pac-Man game and eating up all those different pathogens, bacteria, dead cells, you name it, right? Or even causing cells to break down and die for part of the cleanup-based process. That happens during a fasted state, not while the body's constantly building up. So the interesting thing was this, is that some of the studies, and I'm going to link up the studies for you today. So again, just head over to stephencabral.com/1761, and I'll link up the studies for you. But it showed that caffeine increased AMPK, right? So it helped with autophagy, helps with the repair. This is the morning cup of coffee, by the way. This is not like drinking coffee all day long. This is a morning cup. But another study showed that it may not be the coffee. It might not be, I should say, it might not be the caffeine that improves autophagy and fasting. It simply may be the polyphenols or the antioxidants. And I'm going to quote this. Decaffeinated forms of coffee were accompanied by inhibition of the enzyme activity of mTOR, which fasting also inhibits. So now we're getting the decaffeinated coffee. Why would it work? Why would it inhibit mTOR? Well, it's the specific what's called polyphenols. Think of polyphenols as a phytochemical you hear, right? The phytochemicals that people of the carnivore diet like to call plant toxins. Well, here's the thing about plant toxins. Plant toxins, they like to call it that because they basically keep other animals and creatures and bugs away. While we humans, though, can tolerate a certain amount of those, and they actually help us live longer. And they also help us stave off most dis-ease in the body. Well, who would have thought it when you look at it from a broad perspective? Well, anybody who's not caught up in their dogma would understand this, because you have to understand is that 6,000 years of Ayurvedic medicine, 3,000 years of traditional Chinese medicine, Native American medicine, like looking at all these different types, they all use plants, they all use herbs. Like that's just the way that it is. They help you live longer. When we look at the longest lived people in the world, what are they eating? Well, predominantly plants. I mean, they just didn't even have access to massive amounts of meat, nor would any human being before the dawn of agriculture. So if you're looking at paleo-based man or any of those things, there's no way that you're able to just get meat whenever you want it. Like, that's just not going to happen. You're going to go through a period of eating meat for a few days, whatever it might be, and then a period of not having it maybe for a week, right? Like, that would be more realistic, is because you need to make sure that you get it. And how much you get is depending on your hunting skills and time of the year and all of those different things. So anyway, I don't want to go too deep on that today. I've got a whole show on carnivore diet. And it's not like I'm against anybody who's a proponent of it. It's just that it's just short-sighted. That's all. Like, it's just short-sighted. That's it. You can't do a carnivore diet for the rest of your life. It's just not a great idea. And again, these polyphenols, also called those phytochemicals, like I said before, are what a lot of people make fun of or joke around about or whatever it might be, but it's totally missing the point. It really is. There's a specific polyphenol that we know in coffee called chlorogenic acid or chlorogenic acid. And chlorogenic acid, I'm going to give this quote here, can activate AMPK pathways, resulting in improved glucose and lipid metabolism, providing anti-diabetic effects. I will link up that PubMed study. So basically what's it doing? Well, it's the phytochemicals are helping to improve healthy levels of blood sugar, burn more body fat, and help, essentially metabolic syndrome and certainly anti-diabetic based effects. So the studies in this review regarding coffee consumption investigated the consumption of black coffee without additives and sweeteners. I just wanted to add that quote in there. So if you're drinking your coffee with 2 tablespoons of sugar, or you're drinking it with a half a stick of butter, these benefits may not apply. I just want to add that in. This is about coffee as an actual food, a plant-based food, and deriving the antioxidants out of that. So I just want to share that with you. Now, maybe it does. Like, if you add MCT oil to your coffee, it still may work. I don't know, because the studies don't actually state that. I think we want to be careful with that. I think that adding some healthy fats could absolutely work. I don't think that adding sugar to the coffee will help. I really don't. I think that's part of the case where you're going to start to lose the benefits of the autophagy there. So I also want to state one more thing. We do know to a degree, but it hasn't been studied as much because obviously coffee, people love coffee. But to a degree, I do believe that black tea and green tea will provide a lot of these same benefits. And I've shared my research before, or not my personal research, but research that I've looked up and really read and reviewed on EGCG from green tea and matcha seems to provide those same benefits. So what I want to share with you is this, is kind of like pulling everything together. You can get all the benefits, it seems right now, you can get all the benefits of the coffee without even the caffeine. So if you are someone that's sensitive to caffeine, don't think that you can't benefit. You can absolutely consume coffee, 1 or 2 cups a day, and for most people, stay below 200 milligrams of caffeine per day. And you can consume decaf, and the decaf should just be made sure that there's no chemicals in it. So you want to use a Swiss water processed. Again, you can just go to stevencabral.com/resources for the coffee brands that I recommend, that I use every single day myself. And you can enjoy that cup of coffee knowing that you're doing a lot of good potentially for your body as well, choosing decaf or caffeinated, whatever works best for you. So hopefully this was helpful. Coffee absolutely can improve your fasting, can improve your autophagy and detox benefits. But again, if it spikes your blood sugar, what do? Well, and if it causes anxiety and if it causes sleeplessness, you simply switch over to decaf. Hopefully this was helpful. Thank you so much for tuning in. All the show notes today are at stevencabral.com/1761. Take care, everyone, and I'll talk with you tomorrow.